pull up a chair. You're invited to Welcome to the Table, a podcast where hope meets healing and honest conversations pave the way to restoration. Hosted by Tom and Michelle Weaver, this podcast is a safe space for those navigating the pain of sexual addiction, betrayal, brokenness, or the ripple effect of wounded intimacy. Drawing from their own powerful journey of recovery and redemption, Tom and Michelle bring real-life experience, faith-filled encouragement, and practical resources to those who feel stuck, overwhelmed, or alone. Whether you're struggling with sexual integrity, walking through betrayal trauma, or supporting someone in recovery, this podcast offers guidance, grace, and the reminder that healing is possible. At this table, there's no shame, only support, truth, and the hope of transformation. Join us as we turn what was meant for harm into a testimony of restoration, one conversation at a time.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the table. My name is Tom Weaver with Come to the Table Ministry, and we want to thank you all for taking some time out of your day to spend with us over lunch here. And if you're not watching live, hopefully you'll catch it on the replay. But we want to thank everybody for taking some time out and spending it with us and with our special guest, Matt Wenger from Begin Again Institute. Before we bring Matt on, I wanted to share a little bit about some things we have coming up here very soon, actually. As a lot of you know, and if you don't know, you're about to know, but a lot of over the past 7 years, I guess it's been since we started the men's retreat. So each year we do an annual retreat for the men. It's called the Men Make Men Retreat every October here in Maryland, just outside of Annapolis, Maryland. So that is October 24th to the 26th this year, coming up next month. We'd love to have some of you there. If you're not signed up, please feel free to do so. And then even sooner is the Princess Warrior Retreat, which is something my wife has been doing, Michelle has been doing for the past 5 years. And their retreat is coming up next weekend. There's still a few spots available. So ladies, if you want to get connected with that, go to tableministry.com. It's September 26th to the 28th. And Sandy Cove Resort up in Northeast Maryland. So we'd love to have you there. If you're not signed up, there's a few spots left. We also have a conference coming up in March here at our church at Faith Bible Church in Mechanicsville, Maryland. So a lot of you were there last year. Love to see you again this year. So those are a couple of things we have coming up. Appreciate your interest in that. It's always been good to have each one of those retreats happening on a yearly basis. I mean, it's just so much healing and good connection there. So look forward to both of those coming up. So let's bring in Matt. Matt Wenger is from, as I said, from Begin Again Institute out in Colorado. He's the executive clinical director out there at Begin Again Institute. And I've never met Matt officially in person. I've seen him do a lot of talks, and I've heard a lot of good things about him because I know a lot of guys that have come through through Begin Again Institute out there and through your program. And it's just a lot of good things that I've heard, a lot of good healing from the guys, a lot of good stories from the guys. And I know one of them texted me this morning, said he took off work to listen to you today. Oh. So that's pretty cool. I know he's got to be watching. So kudos to him. But welcome in. Thank you for spending some time with us this afternoon. It's actually morning, I guess, in Colorado. But, and I know you wanted to talk about, and you have a passion to talk about contemplative recovery. But before you get into that, tell me, or tell the people that are listening, a little bit more about yourself, maybe how you got into this. We all have a story. We don't just wake up and say, I want to be a sex addiction professional or a counselor or a therapist or something like that. There's usually something behind it. And then tell us a little bit about Begin Again Institute.
Yeah. My story about getting into this work is a little bit of an odd one for our field. I grew up in a Christian home where emotional connection was not really a priority. You might call the home like emotionally vacant, which is a lot of the homes that men in recovery grew up in, either dangerous or emotionally vacant or sometimes both.
Right.
And in response to that, I was really looking for connection with, father figures. And, masturbation was taking a bigger role in my life through middle school into high school before I really made a connection with a couple of really solid men that discipled me through college into early adulthood. So there, but by the grace of God, go I. When I think of
Mhm.
addiction, because it very easily could have become compulsive, and but the way in which I connect to the men in this work is talking about those attachment wounds that I experienced, disconnection from my family, abuse that happened, secretly in the home, um, uh,
Mm.
those kinds of woundings that a lot of the men in recovery feel. My mother had cancer when I was very young, and having to navigate that with a little emotional support. So, but what brought me into the work, really, besides like learning in the process of being a therapist, that my childhood wasn't very good. A lot of therapists realize
Mhm.
that. They're like, oh wow, I don't think I had a great childhood, but they're
Yeah.
learning from the stories of their clients, right? But I was just looking for work. So I had been a trauma therapist for children, which is,
Mhm.
there's a lot of overlap there.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
sexual. So I answered kind of an ad for a certified sex addiction therapist that was looking for someone to help them with some trauma
Oh,
work.
wow.
And
Mhm.
I started working with men in these group settings, in these trauma-based settings, and really just fell in love with it. Helping men encounter their emotions, helping them encounter what it really means to be a man, what strength really looks like in terms of their
Mhm.
compassion towards themselves and others, and the ability to support themselves and others. I think that's why God gave us strength, is not to
Right.
run over people, but to protect
Mhm.
and support them. And so that's kind of how I got into the work. And I started at Begin Again in 2019, became the clinical director in 2020. And that's when we launched our Christian program alongside of our regular men's program. And both of those programs are 14-day intensives for men that are trauma based, deep dives into the why and the what of their addiction, and done in a cohort model where they can create deep bonds with other
Mhm.
men that are also on this journey, propel them into a lifetime of recovery, and with the support and the tools and the community that everybody needs to
Right.
get sober. So that's kind of the story there.
Wow. It's a good story. That's a good story. And yeah, I think we all going through this know that we can't heal alone. We've got into this addiction or this compulsive behavior through isolation and staying kind of below the surface. We stuff it. We don't want to bring it up. We don't want to share it with anybody. Last year at our men's retreat, I don't know if you can see that. That's half of it's coming off the mug already. But our logo, or our theme last year at the men's retreat, was fully known and fully loved.
Yes.
And we, going through this, you just feel like if they knew us, they wouldn't love us. If our wives knew us, they would leave us, and just battling that demon inside of us that says we can't disclose what we've done over the course of our life, because that's going to tell the tale of who we are. And that's why I think this topic that you want to talk about is really, really good, because it's so needed. We can't heal by ourselves. We've all tried it by ourselves. We need community and connection for healing. So yeah, tell us a little bit about this contemplative practice that you are passionate about.
Well, I think it's just, for me, the roots of it were um, coming out of Bible college, getting involved in ministry and nonprofits right away as a very young person, and um, experiencing this disillusionment and loss of joy and disconnection in my relationship with God, that no matter what I was doing or how much I was doing, or how uh, idealistic I became, I couldn't meet my own standards.
Mm.
And I was becoming burnout in this setting of 80 hours a week, um, missionary work essentially, and quit that after getting so burnout that I burnt some bridges on my way out the door with the place that I was working. In that anger, in that wound, in that disillusionment, in pride, and a number of other things, and going right into a dysfunctional, abusive church, where the pastor of the church was a narcissistic, kind of emotionally dangerous, physically intimidating individual. And in these two settings in my early career, I was just striving to get God to like me, and that father wound of I'm going to do it just right, and then they're going to respond to me and give me what I need, and I can't get it at this place, and I can't get it from my mentor anymore, and this pastor, if I do everything just right, and I'm cool, and I wear the right clothes, and I say the right things, and then like he's going to respect me and give me that, and just striving after these sources of validation and acceptance, and on a deep level, angry at God that he wasn't giving me the sense of intimacy and warmth and connection that seemed to come so easily to others. And I was working way harder than them.
Yeah.
So there's kind of this chest beating. I tell guys all the time, anger at God is very pious, but I didn't know that at the time. I was just putting quarters in the religious machine and not getting my pop out. So I'm just shaking it and pounding on the side and wondering, well, I don't want to not be a Christian. I can't deny the presence of God in my life. I've seen God do too many things, but I don't really like this, like the way it's set up. God seems to be playing hide and seek, and he's capricious, and he's here one minute, he's gone the next. And so really having to confront some of those early woundings in my life, and father wounds, and religious and structures and religiosity and theology that had put me in this place where I felt like I had earned connection with God, and he was not keeping up his end of the deal, right? Somebody stuck a book in front of me at this point where I'm at a real low in my life. I had left the ministry. I'd gone back to school to become a counselor, which at the time I considered ministry for ministry dropouts, right?
That's great.
I'm going to be a therapist.
That'd be full, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
That'd be a full ministry.
Yeah. And so
why go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. No, I was gonna say, why is it so hard? I mean, it's so hard for the church. It's so hard for pastors. A lot of time pastors get kicked to the curb. They can't be open and honest about their struggles. But even just the way you've been talking, it seems like the church has a difficult time with that. And providing that place of connection.
Oh man, how true. This is something that I have said to folks and really tried to sit with myself without being antagonistic or judgmental. But why does the recovery community do a better job at this than the church? Where we can come with our woundedness, we can come with our flaws, we can come with our sadness and our hurt and our pain, and be accepted. But sometimes it doesn't feel like the church does that, or space.
Wants to. Yeah, space. That's a good word. Yeah. They shot. Highway, and a lot of them. Wow, cut out there for a second. I said it's messy. I think it's messy. A lot of churches don't want to get into that mess. I think more are starting to. I think like our church is one of them. How many churches take on 2 people full time for the sole purpose of helping in this ministry and in this area of sexual recovery, and partner betrayal recovery. It's trauma and they see the need for it. But it's, I think you've probably seen the latest Barna study and how the percentage used to be 7% of churches. Now it's what, 9% or 10%? It's still 90% don't. So it's, people need to jump on board, and the church really needs to tackle this head on. But that's probably a different topic for another day.
Well, I think
we could talk a long time for that.
Well, it's wound up in each other, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what I learned in that process was, do we worship a God who is incarnate in our pain and suffering? Is that true?
Mm-hmm.
Or do we worship a God who wants us to get all clean and scrubbed up and then come to him? Because people have these conflicting or desperate images of what religious avenues are, or what Christianity can be or is. You've got the Old Testament where the high priest has to get all perfectly clean and can't be, no unclean, anything like that, and enter into the Holy of Holies and do all of those things. And we get this idea there that God is so holy that we can't approach him with our woundedness. But here's the story of the Bible. Every bit of the story is God coming ever closer to his people, from the mountain to the tabernacle to the temple to the incarnate Son of God himself, who came to be our Emmanuel, God with us. And this is where I think the church misses sometimes, is that we are so busy trying to be a hangout spot or a cultural club for people of a certain set of beliefs, that sometimes we forget that Jesus was a healer, and he was a missionary to the outcasts and to the people on the fringes and the people that he disagreed with. Look at the disciples, right? You've got a zealot who was politically radicalized to murder Romans, right? And you've got a tax collector who is, what do they call it? When you join in with the invaders. The word is escaping me. But
yeah, I'm not sure.
Anyway, so think about the disparate, political views, even within his 12 disciples, right? And what brought them together was Jesus, not agreeing to disagree. It was Jesus that brought them together. This incarnate Emmanuel that says, I am with you in your pain, I am with you in your sufferings, I'm with you in your trauma, I am with you in the struggles of your own flesh. Like I did that.
Right.
And what that means for the church, what that means for addiction is so profound, because if the church can't be with people like Jesus was, or love people as if they were Christ himself, like Jesus instructed us to do, who brought me clothes and food and, water when I was thirsty, food when I was hungry, visited me when I was in prison, the stranger and the outcast, the least of these, right? If the church isn't doing that, then we're not really the church anymore. What that meant for me in my spiritual journey was I didn't know Jesus as well as I thought I did. I didn't think that Jesus wanted to meet me in my anger. I didn't think Jesus wanted to meet me in my confusion. I didn't think Jesus wanted to meet me in my doubt.
Yeah.
And when I got introduced to contemplative tradition, there's these doors there that open, that God wants to spend time with me. That meditation and silence and stillness are avenues through which he can speak to me and be present to me in a way that I wasn't taught in traditional kind of evangelical kind of circles. I was kind of taught that prayer is like an email that you send across the universe, and the Bible is God's email back. and
Mm.
the relationship is happening over this immense distance. But the incarnation says that God isn't the God over there. God is the God right here.
Mm.
And that's what I am excited to talk about when we talk about the contemplative tradition or contemplative tradition, is a orthodox part of the Christian tradition that says that the love of God is not just an idea, it's also an experience. Are you
Recovery. Oh boy.
You're frozen?
Yeah. What do you say to a guy in recovery that's really struggling with that? Really, maybe he knows God, but does he really truly believe that God's love is for him?
Yeah.
And I mean, how do you get that? We talk about a lot. I think it even says in one of the recovery circles, maybe, I don't know, trying to figure out which one it was, but knowledge versus belief, right? We have the knowledge, but how do we really get it ingrained into us? And how does that help somebody in recovery?
Well, I think we have to understand that those problems of addiction and our problems in our faith, or the loss of intimacy that we've experienced in our trauma, and the loss of intimacy in our faith, are really bound up sometimes in the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
That my beliefs about myself, I've unawares to me, have been transferred over into my relationship with God. I'm not worthy of love. I'm not worthy of God's love, right?
Right.
If they knew me, they would reject me. If God really knew all me, if I really revealed all myself to God, then he would reject me. I'm not worthy of love. I'm not worthy of God's love. We could just keep going, right?
Right.
I don't matter. That's a core
Mhm.
belief of someone who grows up in a emotionally vacant home. And then we carry that into, I don't really matter to God. He doesn't care about my feelings. He doesn't care about my hurts and my pains, because I bring them to him and nothing seems to change. I don't matter. So what this means for men in recovery and Christian men in recovery is that we have to explore our relationship with God through the lens of our wounding. Does the God that we interact with, is he described more by our trauma than what the Bible says about him? Are we interacting with the God for who he is, or what our trauma is telling us he is like? When we can fish past that, on the other side of that is a God who's desperately desiring to be with you, who crossed heaven and earth to be with you, who gave up everything to be with you, even unto a torturous death.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That doesn't sound like a God who's playing hide and seek. But if I have a wounding that my parents are not paying attention to me, then I might be prone to believing that about God. And a lot of those things are wrapped up in one another. And contemplative practice is a great way to approach that wounding and gather awareness about that wounding, and then engage in things that bring healing around those woundings.
Yeah. What would some of those practices be? What would you suggest to somebody that's really struggling with that? What's it's funny. I was jumping around, but went through Jake Porter doing a great Bible study on the 12 steps for the past 11 weeks. He's on step 11, and this seems like step 11, right? And trying to get out, one of the things he had, it's almost like an attachment issue with God.
Yes.
He said our relationship with God is often shaped by our earliest attachments, just like you just said, exactly what you just said. But what are some ways that really good practice? I think you mentioned some tools before, or some applications for this. What would you suggest to somebody?
Well, there are a number of practices, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to go through a few of them and highlight what I think are important about them, and then what we miss. Okay. So let's start with one that seems really familiar to us. Okay. Let's talk about fasting for a second.
Mm-hmm.
Fasting is a practice in our faith that most everyone is familiar with. We don't necessarily understand why it is we're doing it or what it's for. And by that I mean, some folks believe or operate as if fasting is a way to supercharge their prayers. Like God is really going to listen to you because you've been fasting, right? Your thing is going to get bumped to the top of his inbox because you haven't been eating. And wow, that is just not how our God operates.
Yeah.
And two, like, what kind of transactional superstition are we accidentally spreading when we do that? But what is the beauty hiding underneath the evangelical version of this practice? It's a practice that connects our body to the sacred spiritual reality that I am dependent every moment of every day on the presence of God in my life. When tempted by the devil, Jesus said that man does not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God. What does that imply? Well, that implies that God is still speaking. It implies that God is still upholding, that our very existence relies on the presence and the word of God. And when I when I choose to not eat for a period of time, I'm allowing my body to be brought into this sacred reality that I am dependent on the presence of God. I am upheld by the presence of God. Colossians says that all things were made for him, through him, by him, and in him all things hold together. Paul says, in him we move and live and have our being, right? And guys, the secret sauce, if you want to call it, of fasting is not the supercharged nature of my prayer life. It's in this crossing that sacred barrier between my physical reality and the reality of the sacred around me all of the time. I'm bringing my body into an awareness of that sacred reality, that the presence of God does not move or shift. My awareness is the thing that moves and shifts. So here's this practice, okay, that we're very familiar with in evangelicalism or whatever, American Christianity, whatever you want to call it, that just like Americans, like we love, like we've taken it and turned it into a transaction, right? Where I do this and then God does this for me. And we've missed this way in which our bodies are being brought into a sacred experience, or the real root of what fasting is about. And the reason I start with that is, one, because it's familiar, and two, because when we're talking about recovery, we have to include all parts of what it means to be a human, right? We have to renew our minds, our spiritual connection to God, our emotional connection to ourselves and our body, right, are all wound up in these things. And fasting is one of those ways that we can make contact with the fullness of what it means to be a Christian. Okay. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, it definitely does. I guess my question is, for a lot of guys, especially coming in a crisis moment, they got caught, and all of a sudden, what do I do next? I know we know all the things that are critical in the beginning stages of recovery, but a lot of times when guys number one, are in active addiction, and then they come into the crisis stage of it. It's been a pretty much of a spiritual roadblock for them the entire time. How do you get them to integrate this and the other practices into their life at an early point? Because I believe it has to be in an early point of their recovery, but how do you get them to activate this part of their recovery early on in a crisis situation?
Well, a couple of things come to mind. One, referencing what we already talked about, that your attachment woundings, your trauma have a lot to say about your relationship with God. And I'm in a relationship with a God that actually wants to be with me, a God that doesn't just put up with me, but loves me, doesn't just love me, but likes me. He's not winking at my sin. He paid for it with his own life. But once we establish that, okay, that God is the Father who sees you from a long way off and runs to you and wraps his arms around you, and as you were in the faraway land, and he was desperate for you to come home, and he sees you and he runs to you, and he covers you with the finest robe. He gives you the ring of sonship and sandals for your feet. This is the God that we serve. This is the Father that we that is just closer to us than we are to ourselves, as St. Augustine said. And then here's this person of Jesus, who is the true and better younger son, who goes into the faraway land and gives away everything that he might bring us home. And he's the true and better older son who's done the work on our behalf, all of the work on our behalf, that we might be reconciled to him. When we introduce folks to that God past their religiosity and their tradition, well, what does that leave us with? That leaves us with a God that obviously wants to spend time with us, different than our caregivers who wounded us and maybe abandoned us, but a God that wants to spend time with us. And a practice that aligns with that is a practice of silence. Now, folks in recovery really struggle with this, but because we struggle with it, all the better. Like wherever the pain is, like lean in, right? Because that's telling you that something needs to change, or we need to grow, right? And that you look at these stories, oh man, where God meets his people in stillness. We're just like this snow globe that's shaking. And we've got work and stress and relationship and addiction and mental health, and it's just right? And we teach folks to be still, to engage in silence, to have the confidence in this loving God that if I am still and receptive, that he will come and meet with me, or my awareness will open to his presence. What I tell guys is, you're a fish, and you're swimming in the presence of God, and you don't even know you're wet. Right?
That's great.
And silence is a beautiful practice, because what that does for the Christian is we're just sticking that antenna up in the air, that receptivity to the presence of God. Like Eastern meditation is about emptiness. I'm going to empty myself, and in that I'm going to find peace and nirvana. But that's not the Christian tradition at all. We open and we are filled with the presence of God that is already at the base of our being. We are temples of the Holy Spirit, right? Jesus said in his high priestly prayer, I and them and you and me, right? There's this indwelling, this mutual indwelling that Jesus, through his ministry and his death, is inviting us into this kind of unmitigated relationship with him. That's very similar to the Trinity, union with distinction. And so silence is one of those great practices. Now, what happens to someone in early stages of recovery when they get quiet? Well,
Their mind.
yeah, yeah,
Spinning up, round and round,
yeah.
circling in thoughts of what they did.
Shame messages, right?
Shame.
Negative thoughts, anxieties come flooding in. Now the question is, were those there all along and I just wasn't paying attention to them, or did silence somehow invite them to the party? You know,
Right.
the reality is they were there the whole time and I
Right.
just wasn't aware of them. But what do I get to do once I become aware of them? Well, someone who's unsupported in their silence is going to be overwhelmed and then just go distract themselves so they don't have to be present to that. But when we support people in these practices, these are thoughts. They're not realities. These are emotional states, not who you are. You are this mountain, and these thoughts and feelings are just the weather moving around this solid identity, this invincible identity that you hold as a bearer of the image of God.
Wow.
And can we stay in that place long enough to be still and know that I am God? You think about Elijah, right? Where was the presence of God? Was it in the fire and the thunder and the? No, it was in that still, small voice. If we're paying attention, you see the contemplative tradition all throughout the scriptures, and the value that the psalmist and Moses and Elijah and others put on stillness and silence in the presence of God. Now, there's another tool that I introduced there that's very old. Okay, none of this stuff is new.
Yeah.
It's called centering prayer, where I use a prayer to give my mind something to do because my mind is used to being active and busy, and remain in that receptive place. So it could be as simple as Jesus Christ, Son of the living God, have mercy on me forever. That's the Jesus prayer. It's the oldest centering prayer. It's thousands of years old. It's not magic. It's just a way in which, when my mind begins to wander into the snow globe, that I bring it back to the presence of God. And in this practice, guess what happens when you practice something?
You get good at it.
You get better at it, right? So every time I'm just continuing to do this, I'm not getting frustrated with myself. Like, why can't I get this right? Why can't I do this? And my mind sucks. You know, I'm a child. I can't have patience and self-control. Instead of criticizing myself, I just come back again to the presence of God. And in that practice, that prayer is not meant to be chewed on. It's just a way to bring my mind back. So another one that I use is I choose to breathe the breath of Christ that makes all of life holy. It comes from a prayer in the old Jesuit tradition. Okay. And the root of that prayer is saying, I'm breathing the same breath. I'm breathing the same air that Jesus did. I'm breathing the same air that Adam breathed.
Yeah.
Right. And I choose to breathe the breath of Christ that makes all of life holy. What I'm saying there is that the sacred is busting through the mundane at every moment. And I'm going to use my breath. I choose to breathe the breath of Christ that makes that all of life holy. I'm reasserting myself I'm regrounding myself in the reality that life is sacred and that God is in the mundane with me.
That's good.
Now, the communion table
Mm-hmm.
is a really great
Yeah.
example, right?
Yeah.
The sacred in the presence of the mundane. What was more mundane
Yeah.
than wine and bread, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Exactly. That's so cool. Are there, like, I think I heard recently, and I think it was actually in that 12-step study, they have some apps if guys want to try to do this. Do you know any good apps or good tools that they can use to get themselves started in something like this? If they're doing it on their own, they're doing it at home, they're quiet time in the morning or something like that.
Yeah, and I'll say the app that I use, and then I'll have a caveat to it.
Mm-hmm.
One of probably my favorite app that I've come across for folks that want to get better at some of these practices like silence,
Mm-hmm.
like centering prayer, like meditation, that the psalmist talks about. Like he says meditation probably like 100 billion times in the Psalms, right? And we
Right.
think as American Christian that means that's the same thing as study. I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
study the Bible, which there's nothing wrong with that, but there's meditation means something more than that. Sitting with,
Mm-hmm.
breathing with, feeling with the sacred text of what does God have for me in it. So the app that I think has been the most helpful, although not exactly what I'm talking about, is the Pause app that John Eldridge developed and puts out. It's Pause, Pause, and he has 1 minute, 3 minute, 5 minute, 10 minute kind of pauses or meditations in which I give back to God all of my anxieties, all my worries, all the people in my life that I am struggling with. And in that process of giving all that back to him, I realized that I am not my anxiety. I am not my emotions. I am not the conflicts that are happening in and around my life. I'm actually in union with God through
Right.
Christ,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to be okay. Right. So that's a great a practice. And holy cow, if in addiction, if I can get up every morning and give away all of those things
For
and
sure.
do it later, like schedule it later in the afternoon and do the same thing,
Mm-hmm.
like what a great outer circle.
Yeah, it's good. Outer
Right?
circle. But somebody just put it in the comments section, the opposite of what you're just talking about. My sobriety has enabled me to be still before God. Before that, I was like a chicken with my head cut off, just running around, without purpose.
Yes.
Didn't know where you're going, aimlessly. Yeah, no, that's good stuff. That's a good app. I never heard of that one.
You should check it out. So he has some courses on there that you can do that I think are quite fruitful. And then there's the pauses that you can do. And it has some instrumental music that I think is good to help give our brain something to do. In this day and age, it's really hard to find true silence. In my house here in Colorado,
Yeah, I bet.
there's an airport, like a a prop plane private airport, and it's just like meow, meow, like all day on Saturdays, right?
Like a
So
sound machine.
yeah, and I'm trying to meditate, and I'm like, these stupid planes. So sometimes having that instrumental music helps the brain focus and kind of tune out other things. So he has some music on there. So that's a great way to get started. I think silent retreats have been a big part of my growth and my relationship with God, and sitting in the presence and the love of God in retreat houses, or a lot of the Jesuits have this ministry for Protestants are welcome too, to come and stay with them in places around the country and just participate in silence and spiritual direction and prayer. And so there's a lot of different tools there, but I love what that guy said about being a chicken with his head cut off.
It's a good visual, isn't it?
Well, that's what it is, right? I'm just like
we were, right? Yeah,
flailing around in between
absolutely.
stimuli all the time.
Yeah. There's there's a shout out to you from Begin Again, Change My Life. Blessings to you from Zach. Look at that.
Thanks.
That's
Thanks,
awesome.
Zach.
Yeah. Well, Matt, any parting thoughts or encouragements for somebody, I guess, trying to take that next leap into their recovery, that next step of faith, or maybe it's early part of recovery and what they need to do at Begin Again, and how could they come there and go to a 14-day intensive or something like that? I know you have a Christian side, faith-based side, and a non-faith-based side, but maybe share something with those that are listening as a parting thought.
I think what the gospel means for men in recovery is that your trauma is not meaningless. Your hurt and your pain is not meaningless. The most precious moment of all time was a moment of suffering and death and torture, but it was full of shame that tried to impose itself on Jesus, right? And what did Hebrews tell us? Hebrews says that Jesus scorned that shame. He did not let that shame define him. He used this moment that was designed to shame and make him powerless and expose him to the power of his enemies. And he used that. He flipped the script and turned that moment of deep pain and deep shame into glory and healing and power. And we will spend eternity saying, holy, 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 the Lord God Almighty, was and is to come, right? Cool. Glory to the Lamb who was slain. He took this moment of pain and shame and he used it to free us, right? To proclaim freedom to the captives and to the oppressed and open the eyes of the blind. So if you're stuck in cycles of relapse, if you're stuck in this addiction and you're early on in that process, once you understand, I know this is hard, but that the gospel is for you too. The gospel isn't just for folks that are doing it right, who have it all together, but that God is incarnate with you in your pain and your suffering. He was present with you in your trauma and your pain, and he's through his own story opening up the power of recovery and the overcoming of shame and the trauma of our young life that manifested itself as addiction.
Right.
The gospel speaks directly to that. Now, if you're hearing me say like a bunch of religious gobbledygook, like I get it. I totally get it. And we need to sit with that little boy. We need to sit with that little hurting person carrying around those wounds, and we can help do that. Okay. But we're body, soul, mind, and spirit. And we have physiological things that we have to do in our recovery. We have spiritual things that we have to do. We have psychological things that we have to do.
Right.
We have emotional realities that we need to experience and find healing from. Like, that's the way that God made us. And so if you're a Christian and you're not leveraging your relationship with our creator and sustainer in your recovery, then we're missing 25% of what it means to be a Christian man in recovery. And why I love talking about these things is the contemplative tradition is a way in which I can open my body, my experience, my woundings to God and allow them to be healed and say, no, I haven't dismissed you. I haven't abandoned you. I've been here, and your hurt and your pain has given you this idea that I'm not present, but I'm right here. Let me show you all the ways in which I am with you. Right. And sometimes that's in the hug of another man in recovery. Sometimes it's in them answering the phone. Sometimes it's in receiving love and connection from a therapist. There's so many ways, right? That's my message, to guys in that early stage. And I don't think that I think there's more than one way to skin a cat. I think we can approach this
for sure
in a lot of different ways, but my spiritual life has been impacted by these things, and I love to offer them to other folks that are trying
Mm-hmm.
to find healing too.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's great. That's cool. Good stuff. All right. How if somebody wants to get a hold of you or Begin Again Institute, what's the best way to reach out to you guys?
Yeah, you can find us at beginagaininstitute.com. And
Mhm.
descriptions of our programs, our partner programs, our groups, our 2-week intensives are kind of what we're known for, that
Right.
are clinically intense, clinically rigorous. And our Christian program is clinically intense and clinically rigorous through the lens of our relationship with God. So
Yeah.
we are clinical and we are Christian, and our secular program is a come one, come all. And a
Mhm.
lot of Christian folks want to go to that program because they feel like maybe in the Christian program they're going to get hit in the head with the Bible, and we don't do that at all. But
Yeah.
we just want to be a place where everybody can come and find healing, both the betrayed and
Mhm.
the addict in recovery. So Begin Again Institute is where you can, or beginagaininstitute.com is where you can learn about all
Yeah.
of those elements of our program.
Yeah. And one thing we didn't talk about is you guys are doing it for the women now, for the betrayed partner too. So
Yes.
have a great program for that too. So yeah, reach out to Matt, reach out to Begin Again Institute, and great resource for those in not just early recovery, just in recovery. It's good no matter what stage or stage of recovery that you're in. So definitely reach out, Matt. Appreciate your time and spending it with us this afternoon, and look forward to getting together sometime again in the near future.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Matt. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us. And if you want to reach out to Come to the Table, you can email us at info@tableministry.com. And thanks again for joining us.